What's up guys, you're watching Life ITCG. Going back to my old school vibe. Got my phone balanced on the desk, I got the playmat on the floor. Let's do a video with the actual cards. So just today I played the Skirmish. The latest Skirmish season for Flesh and Blood is Silver Age. So the promo is the Dorinthia, right, the cold foil. So I didn't quite make it to the top spot, right? I came second. I got the nice Arcane Polarity, right, for top 4. I think I have the cold foil somewhere as well. Right, this full art cold foil shove off for second place. Right, didn't quite get the Dorinthia, but that's too bad. So this is the deck that I've been playing in Silver Age for quite a while now, right, the same hero all the way since it was Project Blue, right from day one. Obviously I've refined and developed it a lot, and I think the latest iteration of the list is really strong. So I thought I'd just quickly run through it. Not too different for the people who have been following up to this point, but still a pretty big innovation, especially in terms of kind of the sideboard cards. So first of all, the hero, of course, Florian. The equips into most matchups, you're playing Nebula Blade as the weapon. All right, very strong synergy with the hero power. Threatening 2 Runechants on hit. Helm of Lignum Vitae for the head slot. Lens of Lignum Vitae for the arm slot. Right, you probably don't have to play both of these, right, in terms of helping you decompose, but you can't play the Guardwell Runeblade arm anymore because they banned it. So if they ever unban that card, I think that's a better choice for the arm slot. Right, having the guaranteed to lock right from the start of the game is really important versus aggro. You don't really need too much help decomposing. Chest, we have the Garland of Spring, right, just to make the resource. And we have the Well-Grounded in the leg slot. Right, these are what you bring in versus most opponents. And then we also have the Arcane Barrier equipments versus Wizard or other Runeblades. You have Crown of Dichotomy in the head slot. You have Runebleed Robe in the chest slot and Nullrune Glove for the arm slot. So you can keep Well-Grounded in your leg slot because it still prevents Arcane if you play versus Wizard. Then I'll start with the reds. So in terms of defensive cards, so you don't necessarily play these versus everybody, but we have 2 Sigil of Suffering and 2 Rootbound Carapace reds. Right, so great value per card. Sigil of Suffering potentially 1 card 5. Rootbound Carapace red is a 1 card 4, and it helps you decompose. For attack actions, we have 2 copies of Cadaverous Tilling red and 2 copies of Runic Fellingsong. So you want to be on rate or above rate when you're decomposing. You don't want to be playing stuff like Cadaverous Tilling yellow. So you do have to skew the construction of the deck a bit to incorporate the auras to make Runic Fellingsong consistent. But overall, I think it's worth it. So those auras are 2 Strong Yields and 2 Harvest Season. Right, there's also some auras in the blue base, but we'll get to that when we get to talking about the blues. So again, these cards are not super great, right, in terms of what you get for spending 1 resource, but they do have go again, so they curve well into attacking with the weapon. And Harvest Season help you stay alive longer, which is generally what this deck is trying to do. Once your hero power is online, your values on your turn cycles are generally better than what most other decks are doing. So Strong Yield is actually one of the cards that gets boarded out a lot when you play against aggro, because you don't want to be in a spot where you played this out onto your field and then you were forced to block a lot and then you couldn't attack and then you just burn it for nothing. That's like a very disastrous scenario. And also just playing it out and having to wait a whole turn. Against aggro, you might not have that luxury to capitalize on the value from it. So Harvest Season has that problem to some extent as well, but it at least helps you stay alive when it does resolve. So yeah, so those are the Earth Auras. In terms of other Earth cards, right, or buffs that help work with the sword, we have Condemn to Slaughter, red, Laden with Earth, red, and Sprout Strength, red. So all these cards are very straightforward. They just give your next attack +3. Condemn to Slaughter actually only gives Runeblade attacks +3, so it doesn't work with Cadaverous Tilling, but that would be like a 4-cost play anyway, so it wouldn't come up very often. So other options you could play for cards that work like this are the elixirs, where, like, for example, it's like a 1-cost 3-block non-attack action. You can destroy Blood Rot Pox you control. If you do gain 1 life, right, your next attack gets +3. So, for example, compared with Laden with Earth, blocking 2 versus blocking 3 is a big deal. So you could argue on that basis that maybe those are better than Laden with Earth, because Laden with Earth isn't an Earth card. Sprout Strength is really key, both because it is an Earth card and because it's free. Laden with Earth is neither of these things, so it's probably worse than Sprout Strength. But once a hero power is online, making 2 Earth embodiments when you pitch into it, that's really powerful. And then Condemn to Slaughter, right, compared to the elixirs, right, even though it doesn't gain you 1 life when you pop the specific affliction or aura token that your opponent gives you, right, it doesn't have to have a specific one, right? It can deal with, right, inertia or blood rot or frailty, whatever it happens to be. And also the effect of sacking your own auras to blow up your opponent's auras can be really impactful. Versus brutes or whatever, like just messing with their mites and their vigor tokens, you can get some extra value that way. And if you play versus illusionist, like versus Enigma, for example, it can be really, really key. Just having extra ways that you can pressure, like if they have a spectral shield with +1 counters on it. Having a way to just straight up remove that can be really strong. So the last reds that we have in the main deck, we have 2 Arcane Seeds Life. This is one of the best cards in the deck, one of the reasons to play Florian. Just 1 card 5, go again with your hero power online. And then we have Chorus of Rotwood. So again, one of the best decompose cards. Right, if playing this gets your hero power online, you get 4 Runechants and 2 embodiments. So generally that's like the best play that you can make with the chest beast, right? You block out with your whole hand, you don't have anything to pitch, right? But you have this 1 resource off of the Garland of Spring. And then you play this, make 4 Runechants, 2 embodiments. Most likely you're surviving because you have 2 embodiments. And you can turn the game around after that. So those are all the reds in the main deck. Onto the blues. 2 Autumn's Touch, right? The most ban-worthy card in Flesh and Blood. So 3-block blue earth doesn't really do anything exciting, but those are all attributes that make it worth playing. Fruits of the Forest. So similar to Autumn's Touch, right? It's just a blue that gets in the graveyard while making some value. Against decks where you're not blocking very often, right? The fact that this just goes to the graveyard by itself is really nice. Like versus all the wizards, for example. We have Canopy Shelter, right? It's only 2 block, but when your hero power is online, it's 4 value because it's making 2 mites. And it is Earth, so it helps you ramp up your Decompose. For the non-Earth 3 blocks, we have the blue of the Condemn to Slaughter, right? Basically in the deck for the same reason that the red one is. Oath of the Arknight. So it doesn't curve very well into the sword, right? It'd be very, very strong if it only costs 1, right? But unfortunately it does cost 2. So usually that means it's either a combo with the chest piece, make an extra resource from the Garland of Spring, or in a very late game situation, right? If your opponent is panicking and they're having to block your sword out not to die, you can often have space to have an extra card to pitch. Right, so make 2 Runechants, give your sword +1/+1, right? Not too bad, especially for a blue block 3. And then we have Sigil of Silphidae. So there are quite a few auras in the deck, right? It can help you decompose by banishing Earth auras, just like the Runic Fellingsong does. Also, it's just a blue. When you play it with Go Again, it turns the sword on, and by itself it deals 2 arcane damage, so that's not terrible value. We have Sow Tomorrow. So it's an Earth card if you block with it, so if you block it helps you decompose, but also it banishes itself when you play it. So just playing this by itself, that's 1 Earth card. Then if you decompose 3 more Earth cards, right, then your hero power is online straight away. It's actually not that easy to resolve this card in this deck. You don't have that many targets for it, because it can't target non-Earth Runeblade attacks. So you can't put Runic Fellingsong back into your deck with this. It only targets Autumn's Touch or Cadaverous Tilling or Roots of the Forest, right, with the way that the deck is built currently. But I still do think that that's worth it, right? Having this extra way to get your Earth card and banish like that is pretty worth it, I think. But you could maybe argue that this could be cut for just any other blue 3 block. Sigil of Earth, right? It makes 2 embodiments when your hero power is online, right? It's Earth, it's aura, so when you banish it off of your Sigil of Silphidae or your Runic Fellingsong, it helps you get your hero power online faster. And then the last cards, so before the latest round of bans, right, this was Blue Flourish, which is Earth, and this isn't. So I think if they unbanned Blue Flourish, I would probably swap it back, but it is actually a bit closer than I thought. Sigil of Deadwood is really good, right? Even though it's not Earth, even though it kind of looks like it is, even though it's not Earth, just playing more auras in the deck is nice, right? It means that your Sigil of Silphidae will more consistently deal 2 arcane when you play it. It means that your Runic Fellingsong will more consistently have something to banish to deal the 1 arcane. And of course, converting into 2 Runechants in the late game is not a bad rate either. So I think all of those cards so far have been pretty similar to the previous video, right, when I was just scrolling through the Fabrary page. So 2 more cards, right, that were the same as the previous version of the deck. I've got 2 Reduced to Runechant. So can be awkward to play sometimes, can't play it for free unless you control a Runechant, but if you do, it's a 1-card 6 with the hero power online, which is a fantastic rate, right? That's how you win games of Flesh and Blood, just by having the best numbers sometimes. So not much to say there. Then the last 5 cards here, right? I think the last version of the deck that I played, this was 2 Evergreen red, 1 Rites of Replenishment red, and then 2 copies of Bramble Spark. So the idea here is that you have these big attacks that either put themselves back into your deck or can put other attacks back into your deck. So you're increasing your density of your deck damage by quite a lot by playing these cards. And also with the 2 Bramble Sparks, right, there's a 0 card or 1 card, no resources, right, 4 damage potentially. So against decks that are trying to be really defensive into you, you have like more damage density in your deck with these evergreens and the rites of replenishment, and then you can target those with the Bramble Spark, right, to pressure your opponent and hopefully win the game that way, right? That was the theory. But the problem with that theory was that it just didn't really work. So against decks like Oldhim, where you want to be bringing these cards in, right? Because they're trying to fatigue you, they have their sledge that they're throwing, right? So you want to try and combat that by bringing in your own pseudo sledge plan to fight on the same axis, right, with the evergreens, right? The problem was that it just didn't ever really actually work in practice. It was so hard to beat Oldhim. Basically impossible if they know they're supposed to bring sledge, which, I mean, it makes sense, right? And if your opponent's smart and you have a bad draw or like a slightly suboptimal draw, they can even beat you if they're playing Titan's Fist on the evergreen plan. So I just decided, well, if these cards, these evergreens and the Bramble Sparks, they're not helping you win in the matchups that they're in the sideboard for, like, why are we even playing them? So instead, what I experimented with and I figured out actually works very well, is very strong, is two copies of Runeblood Incantation, red, right? And Annals of Sutcliffe. Where can I put it that you can see it there? Okay. So, and now your plan versus slow decks that are trying to fatigue you is you just stack a million rune charts like the Florian decks more typically seen in Sage are doing, right? So even though you don't have rainbow colors of reduced to rune chant, right? Even though you don't have cards like Read the Runes, in the matchups where you're executing this plan, right, they're slow enough that pitching 2 cards into this and making 2 rune chants with the hero power online every few turns, right, while you're casting these and building up rune chants that way, right, that is enough, right, to beat these very slow fatigue decks like Oldhim's. And it's very reliable, very consistent, and it only takes basically these 3 slots in the deck, so it's very efficient in that sense as well. Potentially you could even board in Runeblood Incantation in more mid-rangey matchups as well. Like if your hero power is online, it is basically like a 1-card 6, right, for only 1 resource with Go Again, right? So that's quite strong as well. So yeah, so that's basically the main innovation, right? The Annals of Sutcliffe and these 2 Runeblood Incantations, just to help you stack a million rune chants and kill people that are trying to fatigue you. So one thing I will say, right, is that's also part of the reason why this was chosen as the blue to replace the Flourish that was banned, because this helps you accelerate into your stack plan, right? It makes rune chants when it pops. And then the last 2 deck slots, right? Once we've got rid of the... so imagine this was 2 evergreens and 1 Rite of Replenishment in the previous list, and we have 2 slots left for the Bramble Sparks. So now these are just Arcane Polarity. Right? So one of these is the ones that I won myself, and then I traded for the other one with my finals opponent. So just to shore up the matchups versus Wizard, right? If you get a good draw, you still can beat them without Arcane Polarity, just with your AB3 and like mid-ranging them out. But it's probably slightly unfavored or decently unfavored without the Arcane Polarity, and this is just one of the most impactful sideboard slots you can bring. So I think that's pretty solid as well. So matchups on the day was round 1 I beat Oldham, right? I made at least 50 Runechants in game 1. So I don't know if their list was stock. They played many more life gain cards than I typically saw Oldham decks play. So like they have Fruits of the Forest, which is pretty normal, right? They brought in Arcane Polarity, that's also pretty normal. But they had Sun Kiss as well in their deck, and that card that's like it's basically Sigil of Solace, but it's an action without go again. So I don't know how many copies of that they had, but they definitely resolved a few of these. So like the threshold where the Runechants were a guaranteed kill was much higher, so I had to make like over 50, because they went up to over 30 life, right? Just with all their life gain cards, but doesn't matter. Right, the book gets there in the end. Oh, one thing I didn't mention about the stack plan. I initially thought about playing Plume of Evergrowth in the list somewhere. I'd like figuring out some card to cut for that, so that you can buy back your Arcane Seed's life in the stack matchups, right? Just to help you make 4 extra Runechants quickly. But you don't actually need that effect on the Plume, because this also basically does the same thing, right? Against the very slow decks where you're doing this stacking plan, you can pop this, it gets a Runeblade attack and a Runeblade non-attack. So the one that you get Arcane Seed's life, which is a Runeblade non-attack action. Right, Runeblade action. And then for the attack, the Runeblade attack, you can get back Runic Fellingsong, which is nice. So not only is this just putting an extra 3 block into your deck, which sometimes can matter, but it gives you a guaranteed way to make sure that you have an attack action. Because remember, when you have the book in play, you don't have a weapon, you don't have a guaranteed onboard way to throw your stack. You have to pair it with an attack action. And remember, this deck only has 4. So if you had to block with these, or well, yeah, I guess there's nothing else that you would be doing with them, right? But if for some reason you had to block with these, and you have no more attack actions left in your deck to launch your stack, right? As long as you have the Crown of Dichotomy and like a little bit of life total that you can block for 1 more turn and then draw up again, then you have your Arcane Seeds for 4 more Runechants, and then you pitch and throw your Runic Fellingsong. Right? So yeah, so that came up in the first game I played versus this Oldham, right? So I won the game with no cards in my deck. Maybe I was stacking a bit too hard, and maybe I could have sent it like 1 or 2 turns earlier and still been fine, but better safe than sorry. So that was the win in round 1. Then round 2, I played against Dash. Very, very close loss. So previous times I played against Dash, they've brought the Talishar as their weapon. This opponent brought the gun, where it attacks for 1 plus the number of times that you've boosted. So not only can it attack for more than 4, but you can space out your turns so that the turn that you're attacking with it for like 4 or 5, you don't have to pitch into it on that turn. So that lets you go way wider and have an offensive overlap around me trying to block it out. So that was pretty strong. I almost got there. I think they only had about 4 cards left in their deck at the point that they won. And they were just able to go like 1 over my last card that was blocking and to kill me. So that was quite interesting. I'd be interested to play that matchup a little bit more and see what the percentages are like. So that was my loss. Then I beat Briar So in their like all-in turn, where they like burn up shocked, and then they nimblism pop the nimblism arms for the +2, and then they also use the chest piece to attack with the Starfall. So they did all that, but because they revealed Quick Succession to me the turn before, and I knew it was in their arsenal, when they attack with the Starfall, I knew that there was no follow-up coming after it, and it just let me block out everything. They didn't connect on the burn-up shock, and I slowly managed to like outvalue them from there. So I managed to win that game. Next round, 5, I also won. So a little bit of equity that you get sometimes by playing the version with a Nebula Blade, because remember, you don't stack versus aggro. Against like mid-range aggro decks, you're playing the Nebula Blade plan. But if they think that you're on stack, right, because everybody saw you make 50 Runechants versus Oldhim in round 1, then when you lose the die roll, they make you go second, because they assume that if you go first, you're going to just play out a bunch of Runechants and Auras on turn 1. So then the aggro decks make you go second, and then they like attack into you, or they don't, right? And if they do, you get to block and put Earth cards in the bin, right? And then you get to attack them back first, which is exactly what you want to do. So that's partly what helped me, right? And then maybe they mis-sideboarded a little bit as well, because they also thought that I was going to be like mega stacking them. So you do gain a bit of equity playing this hero, the fact that there are like multiple different builds and people might not know exactly what you're playing. So yeah, managed to beat Fi without too much trouble. I did draw like quite lucky to turn my hero power online relatively quickly without too much difficulty as well. Yeah, so that was the Swiss rounds, right? 4 Swiss rounds, Oldhim, Dash, Briar, Fi. Then top 4, I was versus the same Oldhim player, so I just stacked him again. I didn't need to make so many Runechants this time, only like 40 or so. I don't think he was gaining as much life. I didn't need to use any of my equipment. Or maybe the chest piece I used, but not the Crown of Dichotomy, right? I think I lined it up with the turn where I blocked with the Canopy Shelter. I was like, I did the math, and then I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's enough, like the extra +2 plus the Runechants. But I think the people watching afterwards were like, he was just guaranteed dead to the Arcane. Like, you didn't have to worry about the physical at all. So yeah, so that's the nice thing, right? The matchup that was previously felt almost impossible, and quite a lot of people like to play Oldhim in Auckland, so it's nice that now it feels like basically free. I guess if Florian becomes more popular, they can try doing the like smack to reality thing, but I think their sideboard slots might be stretched a little bit too far for that to realistically happen. And then the last round, played versus Acilio, so Acilio 1.0, the like pure arcane version. So this time my opponent was top seed because they went undefeated all through the Swiss, so they got to choose to go first. Turn 1 they play the Aether Sling, right? I can prevent 3 because I have AB3, and then they get go again, and then they fire another big arcane spell at me. So at that point, my hand after AB3, it's a blue and 2 reds. And I was like, well, I can only AB3, but if I pitch this blue and I leave myself with 2 reds, then like I'm highly likely to draw 2 more reds and just like completely brick my turn 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overpitch into my AB3 on turn 0 to make it more likely that I draw a blue. And that I have a functional hand on turn 1. So I did that, right? And I kept my 1 red in my hand. I can't remember exactly what it was, but anyway, what ended up happening was that I just drew 3 reds instead of 2. So my hand's still kind of bricked. That was not the only all-red hand I had that game either. And I think possibly I could have won. I think I played too scared, right? There was a point in the game where I had like a 1 cost in my arsenal and a 1 cost in my hand, and I had like 9 Runechants, I think, and I just pitched to swing with the weapon without playing any non-attack first. And I think my opponent was on 4. So what ended up happening is that the sword only came in for 1 because I hadn't played a card. And they were able to block out all 9 of the Runechants and then put a card in front of the sword. Because I just assumed that like 9 Runechants would be good enough, and like having the extra resource floating and the extra card in my hand plus the boots, like I needed all of that to like not potentially die to an instant in response. But I think I was just playing like way too scared. I'm basically trading a 1 resource for 3 damage for free, because I'm like, if my opponent doesn't do anything, I'm just IP2ing at the end of the turn basically. So yeah, I think I just played like, first of all, playing like way too scared, and then secondly, not realizing that like 9 Runechants is not really enough. Like that deck is not red line. They have tons of blues because they're trying to resolve Cosmic Sutures and stuff. So yeah, definitely a bit of a misstep with that one. But yeah, so in the end, what the game came down to was that they did some arcane damage to me on my turn after I attacked them. I had to prevent it with the boots and like some AB to not die. So then I have the choice: do I cast my Arcane Polarity, which is the last card in my hand, and potentially die to something in response to that, or just arsenal it and try and keep playing the game versus their 2 cards? And what I decided was to just fire it off and try and gain 4. But they had the like Constellar Uplift or whatever in response to kill me. So I was like 90+% sure that he had a way to kill me in response to the Arcane Polarity. But I just decided that like there's so many ways that if I just arsenal this Arcane Polarity, because I'm only at 2, if he plays like a big arcane spell and I can only AB3 it, like if he's coming in for more than 5 arcane, then I'm just like basically dead anyway. And it turned out that his hand was like Comet Storm. I don't know if his hand was Comet Storm, Constellar Uplift plus something else, or just those 2 cards. But anyway, like Constellar Uplift pitching into the Comet Storm would have been enough to like win the game anyway. So yeah, I think I misplayed on the turn, not pumping up the Nebula Blade, but you know, you live and learn. So I don't know if these details about the games are that interesting, or you guys are more here for the deck list. But either way, like pretty sweet deck. Like you can play different game plans into different people, so it has a lot of different game versus like a wide meta. It's not a deck with matchups that are too super polarizing, which is nice. Makes it more fun to go to the tournaments. So I think this is the first weekend for the skirmishes in Auckland. There's one tomorrow. It's in like Silverdale. I think it's a little bit inconvenient for me to go to. I'll probably skip that one. But there might be a couple more within range that I might try and attend. I might try and get my hands on that cold foil Marvel Dorinthia. But apart from that, that's going to be the end of this video. Let me know if you like the format with the real cards rather than the Fabrary screen recording. And let me know what you think of the deck. Let me know what you're playing in Sage. I think the format's pretty fun. I love to brew different decks for it. But that's going to be all from me today. This has been Li-Fi TCG signing out.